and welcome to the Southwesterners Forum. We're joined today by Southwesterner Dr. Jonathan Watson, Chair and Professor of Christian Studies at Charleston Southern University. He also serves as Executive Director of the Faith and Learning Institute at CSU, helping faculty members integrate the Christian faith in and through their teaching. Joining us also is Dr. Madison Grace, Provost and Vice President for Academic Administration here at Southwestern. Dr. Grace also serves as the Dean of the School of Theology and Professor of Theology. Today, we're going to discuss how doctoral studies don't just make us better scholars, but also better Christians.
Good day, Southwesterners Forum. It is a pleasure to be back with you. It is a joy today to introduce two fine gentlemen and scholars that will get to reflect on a particular topic that brings that emphasis today. Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Jonathan Watson, who serves as the chair and professor of Christian Studies at Charleston Southern University, where he also serves as the executive director of the Faith and Learning Institute, where he helps faculty members integrate Christian faith in and through their teaching. Dr. Watson, good day. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Very good. Excited to be with you and to talk about the topic that I keep alluding to and we'll unpack in a second. We're also joined today by a dear friend of mine and fellow church member and close colleague, Dr. Madison Grace, who serves as the Provost and Vice President for Academic Administration at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, where he also serves as the Dean of the School of Theology and Professor of Theology. I think he might be the only guy on campus that has a longer title on his business card than me. Dr. Grace, how are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here with two really good friends.
Awesome. Well, today we are going to be discussing doctoral studies and how those doctoral study and the pursuit of a doctorate degree doesn't just make us better scholars, but how it can make us better Christians and followers. So you guys actually know each other fairly well. Dr. Grace, tell me your story on how you guys know each other, and then I'm going to fact check you with Dr. Watson.
Well, wonderful. I came to Southwestern to do my MDiv many years ago and was going to come here 3 years and then move on and go work in the local church, which I love. God had different plans. He said, I want you to stay here and I want you to work on a PhD. And what I didn't know was during that time that he was also drawing other people here to go through that program with me that would understand the difficulties and the rigors of the study with that as we're trying to raise young families and serve in the local church and serve at the institution. And one of those really dear brothers is Dr. Watson. So Jonathan and I, he started 1 year before I did in the PhD program, but was in our office all the time. I worked here at the seminary, and even though we didn't go to church together, we just became really close friends because of shared classes together and a shared commitment to a Baptist theology and in similar interests in thinking about the doctrine of the church itself.
All right, Dr. Watson, all that true? You got a different?
Yeah, that checks out. No, that checks out. I remember my first memories of Madison are in that theology suite, well, at least where it used to be at the third floor of Fleming Hall. And so, yeah, just, getting to know him, and he always had something interesting to talk about. Always someone to shoot you straight with his take on things. I always appreciated just how sharp his mind was, and how much his love for local church was evident. And we had resonating interests from the beginning. It was a fast friendship for sure.
All right, so quick question, Dr. Watson. You are a Southwesterner, obviously, from your time with Dr.
Yes.
Grace here. Who finished first, knowing you started a year earlier? That's the first question. And then the second question is one I am going to emphasize brevity on and remind us that we're not defending our dissertations right now. What did you write on, and why did you pick that topic?
Yeah, so, who finished first? That's easy. Madison finished first. Really, Madison passed me up in every way, right? He started after me finished before me and has ascended well above me. So
And his beard grayed much faster than yours as well.
So much faster. So
much faster.
although I did beat him in terms of losing hair faster. So that's maybe my one claim to fame in our friendship. Yeah, as far as my dissertation, and I'll keep that really brief. I've always had, from my time, so I did my MDiv studies at New Orleans. I don't know if that's a seminary that should not be named on this podcast, but no, I did my MDiv there. My initial foray into theology was with Dr. Stan Norman, and Dr. Norman's love for the church really it ignited and fanned into flame a love for the church that I had as well. And so I've always been interested from even before then, but especially from those days forward in terms of the church's fellowship, and especially how that fellowship is expressed in the ordinances of the Lord's Supper and in baptism. And then my readings in the PhD program only kind of continued, that interest just kept coming up and again and again and again. And I remember being just kind of taken in, as I was doing some work in Luther, and he was explaining how baptism worked. He's like, if you want to know how baptism works, you should look at infant baptism, because that tells you perfectly how baptism works. An infant doesn't bring anything to the water, and no faith or anything that they bring, they're brought there. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting to say that adult baptism works like infant baptism. So that's kind of just as a credo Baptist, that was something that was really provocative. And then I'm bumping along, just reading some things, and I run into a Roman Catholic liturgist, Aidan Kavanaugh, who said, if you want to understand how infant baptism works, you should look at adult baptism. And I was like, wait a second, here's two infant baptizers who have radically different ways of understanding what's going on in baptism, and then by kind of implication, what's going on in relation between baptism and the Lord's Supper and your first communion. And so that just kind of set forth, that plus a number of other things, really kind of stirred the pot. And I ended up writing my dissertation on the relationship between baptism, catechesis, and communion, and kind of thinking through the various ways that relationship has been worked out across church history, and try to map that in various ways, and then gave some thought at the end of it, like what kind of produces or gives rise to one model of relationship over another, especially when we're talking about these, otherwise you would think they were similar traditions in terms they both are infant baptizing traditions, but what really gives rise to that relationship. And then thinking hopefully with readers about what are the implications of all of this for the way we think about that relationship for the church.
Very nice. All right, Dr. Grace, tell us about your dissertation, your topic of study.
Sure. Just to fill in what he said earlier, he did pass me in that he had that dissertation published into a book that is worth reading. I did not take my dissertation and get it published yet. So, but that dissertation itself was on the theology of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I had similar interest in thinking about who we are as a church. My major concern was the question of what is a church. We run to pragmatic means a lot in the local church. We're going to do this and do that. But I think that what we do, how we act, really needs to be based upon who we are. Mm-hmm. And so the identity of what the church is needs to be thought through. And I found that Dietrich Bonhoeffer had some interesting things to say about that. So I did an investigation into his thought overall, his theology, especially leading to the doctrine of the church, or what we call ecclesiology. And so it was called The Church as Place in the Theology of Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Very cool. Okay. All right, Dr. Watson, back to you. Of course, when one thinks about or engages in a doctoral journey, they're confident that it's going to make them better writers and better thinkers and better scholars. But one of the things that you've recently discussed with Southwestern particularly is that scholarship can and should be a form of sanctification. How is that reflected in your own experience, and how do you want us to think about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, it strikes me that if we come to a place and we gather together for rigorous theological study, and we're thinking about God and all things in relation to God according to His Word, we're surrounded by godly mentors. We are surrounded with fellow peers who are faithful to Christ and seeking to follow Christ. We are praying and asking God to bless our efforts. I struggle to think about or to conceptualize how it is that we can come out on the other side of that. If all of those things are true,
Mm-hmm.
and they may not be, right? But, and not all programs are created equal. And just because a program is strong doesn't mean that someone necessarily will go through it in the right way and for the right reasons. But it seems to me that all the indicators are there, all the ingredients are there for spiritual growth. Mm. And so it takes an act of unfaithfulness on our part to go through it in a way that doesn't produce spiritual growth.
Okay. Dr. Grace, what would you add? What do you have to augment that?
Yeah, I think that's right, that if you're engaging, especially in one of our programs here at Southwestern, where, the Bible's central to everything that we do, even if it's like history or a topic that might seem a little further afield from it, we still are interested in what the Word of God says. And on the highest level of our education here, that we're engaging in our thoughts, our fields of inquiry with the Bible central to that. So we're studying the Bible in a community and having some teachers above us that are modeling how to think, mm-hmm. but then modeling how we should live out our Christian lives. And I think that in particular, Dr. Watson's mentor and my mentor both are strong churchmen as well. Yeah. And they instilled in us constantly not just ideas about theology, which they did, but how this was in service to the church. And they also modeled to us how they served the local churches that they were at, mm-hmm. and that they still do. And I know that was impactful for me. I'd also add is that when you go through a program, I know there's a lot of programs that you can do online now, and that kind of cuts down on that community. I do think that for us and the experience that we had together, that we had the strong community. Let me give you an example of that. I did start, as we said earlier, 1 year later than Jonathan and some other of our friends. And one of our friends had this opportunity to take us to box seats at a Cowboys game. And so I was like, I'm a PhD student. Someone says, hey, go there. I'm like, yes, I probably need a break from all the studying. And we're normal people too, that we like normal things. So even though I'm not a Cowboys fan, I'm glad to go along and cheer them on. And it was a great time just to hang out together. The guys that were part of that, we still text each other every week, and we created this bond. And for me, that bond really occurred on the ride home from that day. And I'll remember this for the rest of my life, of how the rigor of the program and the demands of it were weighing in upon me. And I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I don't know. It's like I came to seminary to go work in the local church. Is this me just getting doctor? Is that what's driving me here? Is it an ego thing? Is this really what God's called me to do? And it's wrestling with that and just wondering, should I even continue? And I was expressing these feelings in the car on the way back from the stadium, then in Irving, all the way back here to Fort Worth. And Jonathan in particular just said, like, hey, are you reading Schleiermacher right now? And I'm like, yes, I am. He's like, it's okay. I wanted to quit when I was reading Schleiermacher too, because it was a lot to read in a very short amount of time. Not necessarily the content of it, but just like the demands to understand a very complicated book in a short amount of time. It's like, just keep persevering. I keep pushing on into this, because a lot of the rigor of a program, or any sense of discipleship for that matter, is about showing up and continuing to push on, especially in a PhD program. This is why we constantly are telling people, don't stop working on your dissertation. Don't quit on that. Keep writing, even if it's just, a sentence or a paragraph a day. And I say that anyone that's still trying to get their dissertation done. And that was the encouragement I had there. And throughout the rest of the program, the charity, the integrity, the humility of these friends to push me on, not just in my work as a scholar, but my work as a Christian was constantly there. And so that friendship was such a huge part of molding me into the type of scholar that I became.
Dr. Watson, you saw Dr. Grace smirk when he talked about any of those writing their dissertation. Speaking to me, I am currently a doctoral candidate here at Southwestern and writing my dissertation. If you could see the rest of my office right now, you can clearly see that I am in the writing process at the moment. But I'll add, if I may, as someone who is still in the throes of it, the sanctification process, there are many ways to grow in Christ-likeness. And one of the ways that I have experienced growing in Christ-likeness in my sanctification journey is in prayer. And I've had to do that a lot more in the writing process than I did before. I don't have the words and definitely don't have everything that's needed to pull this thing off. So I'm praying a lot more for the Lord to keep the sun up and for the words to come. I actually journaled in my prayer journal last week, Lord, I need just short of Holy Spirit level inspiration here. Like, help me out, please, God. So yeah, it's just it's a truth, but it's a bit funny. Now, Dr. Watson, you've talked about the journey of spiritual formation, sanctification in the doctoral process, but what are some negative things that can come in this process that you got to guard against?
Yeah, so I don't think that spiritual growth, character formation is automatic by any stretch, right? It's clear to me that it actually could work in exactly the opposite direction as you kind of, you're going to go through a season where you're like, man, my knowledge has expanded at an exponential rate because of the amount of reading you have to do. The level of discussion is just at a different level. The expectations will draw out of you things that you didn't even know you're capable of, and you start to look at that and you go, "Wow, look at how much I know!" Right? And so the knowledge can very easily puff you up if you don't continue to ask the Lord to make this one to grow you through the process and one to keep you humble in it. I mean, you can get puffed up, and you come to a seminar and you get to slap down the detractors to your thesis or whatever it is. You can walk out feeling like you're something that you're not. I'd also say you can become less charitable. I think I mentioned it made me more charitable. You can easily become less charitable, right? Like as you become more adept to labeling people, right? You label them and now all of a sudden you're like, well, I just disagree with that whole system of thinking, so therefore I'm not going to listen to you. And so you become almost like you're cutting people off at the hedge, right? Because you think you already know where they're going to go and you're going to outsmart them or whatever. Or perhaps there's the idolatry of influence that can come up. It's really fascinating because when we moved out here to South Carolina 10 years ago and I started teaching, it was just really interesting. Nobody in Texas, we'd been there for 9 years. Nobody in Texas ever called me doctor or professor. Nobody in South Carolina has not called me that. So I came here and now there's this completely different context and the way in which people relate to me. I've had a job as a professor from day one in South Carolina. And there's that kind of like, you could make that an idol. You could make that a thing. And it was interesting the way the Lord helped me here as I was getting into that and learning how to operate in this role. It was interesting because there were certain threats, and I won't go into all the things, but like they were just culturally. What if I lose my job? What if the government or the accreditation agencies come and they try to take away our school funding? We're no longer eligible for that, and therefore I'm not a professor anymore. Who am I? And you kind of work through that and you start to realize, well, I'm a beloved child of God in Christ by the Spirit. Like that's my most fundamental identity is that. And but if we're not careful, man, we can wrap our identity around being a doctor, being a professor, being a scholar who's recognized and who's published. And so, man, there's lots of pitfalls, I think, there.
That's very valuable to hear. And I think such a good warning to anyone considering. Yeah, that's wonderful. All right, Dr. Grace, your position as provost. First, I want you to define what a provost is for some of our listeners. So why don't you do that for us real quick, and I'll finish the question.
Yeah, a provost is a term that is used a lot in higher education. It comes from the history of higher education that comes out of all the way back into the medieval period. But in short, a provost is the person that is over the academics of an institution. So my title is provost and vice president for academic administration. So some schools have one or the other. We're titling it both here. In some ways, it's seen as the management of academics. So not just looking at over the faculty, but faculty curriculum, budget, everything that has to do with the main mission of an institution of higher education. The provost is managing that and then giving vision for the academics of the institution. In one way, I am the chief academic officer of Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, serving as the provost.
Well, that leads wonderfully into the question that I want to ask you. How would you say that Southwestern, as the leader of the academic endeavor and mission of our school, how would you say that we structure the educational experience of doctoral students, and really all of our students, with an eye toward sanctification? And how can we, as educators in this space and at Southwestern, cultivate an experience that reflects what Dr. Watson experienced?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good question because there's so many moving parts in any institution, and it's the same in higher education, that you're thinking about all your personnel issues, your faculty and your staff, and you're thinking about the content of what you're going to be teaching, and then just the budget constraints that are part of that you can get lost in those details. And so what you need to do is to make sure that when you're making decisions that you have a strong mission. And that mission has to align with what the president and the board want for an institution, and it's and aligned with others across outside of academics. So there's nothing I do here at Southwestern that doesn't go alongside what Chandler's doing here or other people on our leadership team and the variety of areas. We do all of this together. I'm just giving direction and leadership in the academic area, and all of that fits underneath our mission. So any institution needs to have a clear and understandable mission of what they're doing. And for us, that's explicitly Christian and therefore has a discipleship component to it that is just a part of the nature of the school. And then added to that, and this is what we do here at Southwestern, that you have really clear core values that help shape the culture, that make sure that mission is being put into place here. So if we want to say that we're student-focused, which is one of our core values, we also want to say that we are Christ-centered and grace-filled. And that, I think, helps make sure that in the classroom, in the mentorship environments with our students, that you can see a growth in discipleship and especially sanctification in the way in which that Dr. Watson's talked about that. Yeah. Thirdly, I would say that my role in particular is trying to look at a curated and cultivated faculty. I do this alongside the president, obviously. He is the one that is chiefly hiring the faculty here. But I'm helping manage that and trying to think through who are the people that are going to come and teach our students. And so we want to make sure that we bring in the right people that fit our culture, that fit the mission that we have in front of us, that can bring about the outcomes that we want for all of our students. And then fourthly, paying attention to a consistent curriculum. We teach a lot of classes here at Southwestern. We have 5 schools in 4 different levels, from adult education all the way through the PhD program we're talking about today. And so it's important that there's a consistency in that curriculum that is with our core values and with our mission and with the purposes for which the school exists. So I'm constantly thinking through those elements of mission to core values, to our faculty, to our curriculum.
Yeah, and just to highlight, our mission is to equip men and women for the work of ministry and serve Southern Baptist churches for the glory of God, the Cliff Notes version of it. And that kind of plumb line that runs through curriculum, to your point, are 2 of our other core values of, yes, being Christ-centered, but being scripturally grounded and confessionally guided. We've got a clear plumb line that keeps us honest and true. Now, Dr. Watson, one of the things that you do at Charleston Southern University is you are the executive director of the Faith and Learning Institute, which helps faculty integrate their faith with content. And your content in the classroom is broad and diverse and multiple degree opportunities. So East Coast folks, if you're looking for a great school, I would emphasize and encourage you to look at Charleston Southern. So what are some ways that you, in your role in the institute that you lead, equip faculty to provide a student experience that takes orthodoxy and orthopraxy informed by Christ-likeness and deliver something?
Oh, that's great. And it's an interesting task. It's so cool how the Lord does this. This was not something I had thought of or conceived of when I was going through my PhD program. That He would lead me into this role, and in this context, I spent almost 9 years there at Southwestern, and I was thinking of ministry and of teaching in that kind of context, and here I am now it's a Baptist school, but it's broad, kind of diverse faculty. We have evangelical, faculty members from other denominations that work here. So I'm having to come along. I have the opportunity now in this context. They're teaching other things, not theology or biblical studies. And so we're trying to help them. One, right? We're helping them, giving them some tools and frameworks to think about. One, how the Christian worldview and the Christian faith intersect with their disciplines and how their disciplines might shine some light on. I was just having a conversation this morning with one of our criminal justice professors. He was excited because today they were having a crime scene investigation. And so we got to talking about it. It was like, well, what's happening? Did someone get murdered or what's going on? He's like, well, it's going to be the case that they think it's a murder, but then they're going to learn that it's actually a suicide. And so, we got into a discussion about, that's interesting because, as they're going to go through this immersive experience, they're going to talk through the kind of procedural aspects of how you investigate all this. You're going to have an interesting opportunity to really kind of help them, one, think about their unique value and worth before God and why this isn't a solution to the problem. It's actually giving in to the enemy. And how the Christian faith offers hope to these kinds of situations. Of course, we've got students. We're not a confessional institution in the sense that we require students to have a personal relationship with Jesus. There are some colleges out there that will do that. But in our context, it's our professors that have this commitment. And we are in a position to articulate the gospel to people that don't. And so he's going to have students in his class that he has an opportunity to share the hope of the gospel with through a crime scene investigation scenario. And so we try to give them frameworks to think about, how does my discipline, what are some of the areas of Christian theology that it kind of intersects closely with? Good example of this kind of fleshed out. Jacob Schatzer has a work called Faithful Learning. He walks through various categories of systematic theology, and at the end of each chapter, they're like 10-page chapters where they just kind of overview the big ideas. At the end of each chapter, there's a different scholar from a different discipline reflecting on how this doctrine intersected with their discipline, and that's really what I get to do here, is to help our professors think about what that looks like for them. So, yeah.
Well, praise the Lord for Him taking it out of Texas and putting you where you are so that you can impact the kingdom and help colleagues think Christianly and how it impacts. That's incredible stories. All right, Dr. Grace, what would you tell somebody, and I hope that there are pastors and leaders and alumni on this call that are maybe with their master's degree and thinking about if there's a next step, or thinking about those they're discipling right now who may need to take the next step in their educational journey. What would you tell someone considering doctoral work today, and then how would you encourage them to take their next steps and discern those steps?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the things that was told to me was that I thought was really helpful because we can think about this in terms of, do you have the intellect? Do you have the desire to study? Those type of things, but do you have the calling for it? Is this what God wants you to do? And so where you have ability, desire, and opportunity to come together, you might have calling. Go ahead and engage it. Seek after your PhD in particular. And think about the reasons why you want to do that. And sometimes, and oftentimes, students come to us like, I want to do a PhD because I want to teach somewhere. And I think that's great. We definitely need to constantly be training up the professors that are going to be invigorating minds in a Christian way, and that kind of like faith integration that Dr. Watson just talked about. And so we need good Christians engaging through that. But we don't always find an academic post, and I think that's okay too. I think the greater call for a scholar is to help us think Christianly about the things in the world that are important to us. And so sometimes that means being a PhD and then going back into leading a church as a senior pastor. Something that means becoming a writer that's writing for a magazine or writing books or engaging writing full-time in some way. Engaging culture with our Christian values and having the highest level of education that one can get in a terminal degree allows you to think more critically, know the content better, and to speak more prophetically into the culture in ways that we desperately need today.
So good. Well, I will say for those of you that are discerning your next steps or discipling those that are working that through, please visit our website, swivets.edu, to learn more about our doctoral programs. And if the Lord leads you to begin an application, you can use the code SeminaryHill to waive that application fee. So we would be thrilled to see you begin the journey and to walk with you in that. Well, Dr. Watson, Dr. Grace, this has been a very enjoyable phone call and Zoom call for me, and I hope that it edifies those that listen and challenges them to think about their journey. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the Southwesterners Forum, and we'll see you next time.